Hello, everyone. I'm Nolan Myers, CEO of Double GDP. We're building an end-to-end platform to help cities connect with residents, accelerate growth, and deliver responsive public services. I'm here today on April 1st to take us through our sprint goals for the last 2 weeks. As always, I go through our overall goals, what we accomplished against those goals, and what we hope to do in the next 2 weeks. So overall, our goals for the last 2 weeks were to average 96 weekly active users per week, deliver in-app messages, design and do the specifications for a business registration flow, consider what we might do to help with COVID and how a city might respond to COVID, and focus on recruiting, especially looking at back-end engineering. So how do we do against those goals? Let me start by sharing our weekly active user chart. So this just shows a rolling chart of weekly active users over the last several months. And as you can see here, this shows a 3-week rolling average, but the way I'm talking about it at a sprint term is actually average of last 2 weeks, which would put us here at around 96. Our average for the last 2 weeks was actually around 120, so we did well against that goal, and looking pretty good so far. I will say I'm a little concerned about coming into the next sprint because right now we've now enrolled all of the known clients of our main customer, and so right now we are looking at a lot of first-time users, and I'm concerned that we have a bit of a leaky bucket in the product here. So that's something that's going to be a top priority for the next sprint, and we'll be looking actively into how we can start getting repeat users there. But at least as of where we are now, it looks pretty good. The other thing, just looking in terms of how the app is performing right now, we started rolling out feedback loops a couple of sprints ago, and have been monitoring how we're getting thumbs up and thumbs down. Now, this is mainly after somebody checks in at the gate and reporting on how the experience was and whether they're happy with the app. In the last sprint, we got 62 pieces of feedback, 95% positive. And in fact, of those negative reviews, 2 of them are the same user sort of clicking it twice. So, but I'm still going to count that as a 5% negative, and just assume that that extra click is part of a negative experience. But overall, very good. And the feedback that we did get was largely around app confusion and not sort of really understanding what the application is for. And so we've rolled out a few things to help with the messaging on that and help improve that in the next go round. And then the big feature for this release was client messaging, which we actually struggled a bit to get out. There were a few snafus in our development cycle, miscommunications within the team, and things that we needed to work on there, all of which we're sort of really focusing on to try to improve in terms of developer operations moving forward. But we did get the feature out and it's live, and we have our first 8 client message threads up and running with real customers. So this just shows what this MVP looks like of getting something out, where we have an administrator able to talk with a city resident. And right now, it's a rolling thread. So each of these represents one user, and it's just an infinite feed in terms of what that user's interactions are. So you can see a full history of everything that they've said with the city, which at this point is not very much, but gives us a good starting place for being able to think through things. A couple of other things in terms of progress on this sprint. We really made a lot of effort thinking about velocity of product development and trying to just make sure that we are able to efficiently spec things out and get them rolled out. And we did see some good progress there. Oops, I'll actually come back to that. But in terms of our overall velocity, we're looking at the number of merge requests per week. And you can see over the last 2 weeks, we've definitely made a good deal of headway, especially from where we were in the sprint prior to that. I think still a lot of opportunity for improvement here and things that we can be doing a lot better in the next release, but I'm glad to see some forward momentum there. Nicholas, our new head of engineering, this was his first full sprint, and I actually want to call him out and say thank you for helping to have better specifications, really leaning on me to write better product specifications, and did a lot of work this sprint to work on code coverage, which you'll see in his update. So I think some good positive momentum that we can carry into the next sprint there. I said on the second goal, what we wanted to do was think about the business registration flow. And here we really extended some designs that we worked on in about 2 sprints ago that Jay showed in his update. And the idea here is just that we want to be able to have a business register to come to a new city. And we have some initial flows there where a business can register and they can actually do some of their paperwork. Some of the stuff that we've done has been on the back end there and making sure that the business has a workflow that they can step through with the city to make sure that all their paperwork is being managed properly. But the other way that we extended that design in this sprint is to think about how they might then enroll employees or manage other processes that need to be managed. So you can imagine that one business has a master workflow that is their paperwork that they need to do. And then they have hundreds or thousands of employees that also need to go through whatever paperwork they're thinking about. So this is just an initial mock about what that design would look like when a business, let's say Google, is joining a city, and then they have a bunch of employees, in this case, all named Lindsay Strood, to be able to register and have them come into the city. So congratulations, Lindsay, for your new job at Google. And we look forward to seeing you at a double GDP city very soon. The second thing that we wanted to do is explore really how we might contribute to the thing that everybody's thinking about is in COVID, and I do think that cities really have a responsibility here and an opportunity to communicate with their residents a lot better than they do. I don't have a mock or anything to show here, but really just thinking about what is the obligation of a city? What is the opportunity for the city? And we did a lot of sort of exploration and ideation around what a product here might look like. And our thinking there is largely around the idea that what if everybody in a city or any kind of community voluntarily allowed themselves to be allowed the community at large to track in an anonymous way where they've been over the past few days, and that so that if they then reported themselves as having COVID, the community could be aware of the people that were nearby them in the last 48 hours before a response, so that then they could be aware that they need to quarantine for a while to prevent the spread of that disease. So the idea is really sort of helping the community share data that they are willing to share, and share it in an anonymous way so that they feel safe, so that then everybody can step up and be able to say, this is where I now have tested positive, and you can see where I've been in the last couple of days. So I think there's some ideas there that we're very excited about. In the next sprint, again, we want to take these a little bit further and see both, does this actually make sense? Is this something that would be a high enough priority for us to adjust some of the things that we'd already been thinking about in our roadmap, and think about what kinds of ways we might get started on it and experiment with it to see if it actually has some traction. The other thing then that we were, and so then I guess that was the second goal in terms of product ideas that we wanted to flesh out in this sprint. A few other things then in terms, one of the main goals was thinking about recruiting. And so there, what we've done is we've reposted and up-leveled our job for the back-end engineer. We really want to focus on somebody that has quite a lot of experience and can bring an uplift to the team, and really sort of just sort of plow through a lot of really big features and get our product velocity up. So we up-leveled this to a senior backend engineer role and reposted it on Stack Overflow. We have about 60 applicants, and we've had one first round screening, and a lot more scheduled to come soon. So I'm happy with the initial progress there, and hoping that this will give us a big boost into going into recruiting for the next sprint. Just a few other things that we did that were not in our goals on this sprint, but have been sort of longer term goals for us. We've published our handbook now to the web. And this means that on the back end, we moved from a Google Doc to a Git repository. And next sprint, we'll be training all WGDP teammates to be able to contribute to this and really focus on a documentation first approach to product development. So here in our product engineering playbook, we have an initial playbook, we have an on-call schedule, we have a few processes around product development. But what we want to do, this is all just a port from a Google Doc. What we want to do is train everybody to say that the way that we want to work on documentation internally is to document first and then go into and then roll it out to the team so that we have a very well documented process of how we collaborate. The other thing that we did in this sprint is really start thinking ahead. And this is something that has been really a barrier to our velocity in product, is that we've not come into a sprint with well-specified stories and features that allow us to start from day one. We've always been playing a little bit of catch up where we're having to spec and do development all at the same time. This sprint, we start with a backlog of about 21 features and stories that are ready to go, where I have spec'd things out. We have diagrams, we have a list of requirements of what needs to be done, and Nicholas, our head of engineering, has looked through them, made sure he understands them, and that he can start working on them with an engineer right away coming into the sprint. So this is another major step forward in terms of the product velocity that we'll be able to have coming into the next sprint. And then in terms of accelerating from there, we've also then mapped out a roadmap of what we hope to do in all of Q2. So just lining up all of the different features that we have, the major areas, and trying to get into a list that will allow me as the head of product to just start working on things ahead and just make sure that we always have a good backlog of features coming in. We of course want to remain very responsive to things that are on the field, and we will always be taking feedback from customer success and from clients, bringing that to the top of the queue so that we're able to be responsive there. But this just allows us to start working ahead on the backlog in a way that we have not in previous sprints. So very excited about that. Looking ahead in terms of next sprints and goals there, obviously high-level goal is to increase weekly active users. I'm a bit concerned about this coming into the sprint because of what I talked about in terms of just having a leaky bucket, not having a lot of return users. But we do have some features that we're working on early in the sprint to see if we can actually push that forward a little bit. So two major things that we're thinking about are being able to do in-app progress updates and publishing of content so that customer success managers can push things out to the field and then use the in-app messaging to be able to deliver messages or deliver news or progress updates to clients. And then secondly, thinking about just a lot more improvements around that messaging and the management of the support queue so that we know that we're always following up with customers and being able to show really good responsive customer service there. A few things that we want to explore more. We want to push forward a little bit on the COVID. We'll be looking into payments and how one of the most commonly requested things from clients is, where am I on my payment status? And so we want to do some exploration on the product side around that. And then more around that business registration and especially the sign up side of that, see if there's something that we want to get out to the field and start testing around that. We're looking for a couple of, we're talking with a couple of potential customers around ways that we might pilot that. So if somebody is ready to go and get that going, we also want to be ready to go within the next 2 sprints to get to push that out and start getting some traction there. And then finally on recruiting, I want to be late stage with a back-end engineer, and I want to have complete the recruiting process with a product manager that we're in late stage conversations with right now. So that's it, everything about this sprint and what we hope to do in the next couple of sprints. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you again in a couple of weeks.